Hey, welcome back everybody. Happy Saturday out there. Hope we all had a wonderful first week of January, and we've got a very active pattern to discuss as that first storm system we've been talking about really all week is really beginning to bear down on much of the mid-Atlantic and Northeast, likely as you're watching this, and that second storm system that I think will be even more impactful than this one is right behind us here, moving into the Pacific Northwest. Now, we're going to discuss both of these in today's video, and we're also going to discuss the potential of a bit of an Arctic outbreak throughout the country here going into the middle and end of January, and we have high confidence that that will begin out west. The big question mark that we'll try to answer in this video is how far east does that get, and does it bring winter weather chances with it? Now, if you haven't already subscribed, definitely consider doing so. Like the video if you like it, and comment. Let me know where you're watching from. And I will also mention, if you have any cool pictures of what you're seeing out there today, make sure to submit them in that form in the link below to have a chance of it being featured in tomorrow's video. With all that said, let's go ahead and jump on into your forecast, as there is a lot to get to on this Saturday. Now, taking a look out there, again, we have two big storm systems that are already showing up very well on our water vapor loop here. Here's that first storm moving up through the mid-Atlantic currently. That's the one that's going to bring snow to much of the Northeast. The second storm is this massive kind of trough that is digging into the Pacific Northwest and will eventually kind of get down into the Four Corners and finally eject out into the Ohio River Valley come early next week. And that one, again, is going to bring a lot of impacts with it, and we'll discuss that here in today's video. Now, taking a look at current watches, warnings, advisories, and radar imagery, I'm going to go ahead and refresh this really quickly just to make sure that we are up to date. And zoom this back in. Again, we have a lot of precipitation moving through the East Coast currently, and I'd love to hear from you in the comments what you're seeing where you live. A lot of folks seeing just good old-fashioned rain here into the southeast, but we are still holding on to some icy conditions from western North Carolina up into the foothills and mountains of Virginia and West Virginia. Kind of further to the north here through much of Pennsylvania, this is starting off as a quick burst of heavy snow, and that will continue to move further off towards the north and east this afternoon. Now, we do have winter storm watches, winter storm warnings and winter weather advisories for much of the Northeast, for much of New York State, much of Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, portions of Vermont, New Hampshire, Pennsylvania, and even northern New Jersey, as a lot of that snow is likely to fall. Now, looking back west, again, that was just the first storm. The second one now moving into the Pacific Northwest, bringing with it a lot of mountain snow and some big-time rain as well to some of those lower elevations. That eventually, again, going to dive down off to the south and east here within the next day or so, and that's why we also have winter storm warnings, winter weather advisories, and some winter storm watches for much of the Four Corners regions, from Salt Lake City down towards kind of Albuquerque, where we could get some pretty good snowfall accumulation. And again, we'll take a look at that map here in just a moment. Now, something I did want to quickly mention, we do have a severe weather threat today down through the Florida Panhandle. Actually, I can go back one map just to show that to you even a little bit better here. You'll notice we have this big area of convection kind of crossing down the Gulf Stream and eventually over the Florida Peninsula. Due to that, we do have some rotation in the atmosphere. We do have some strong winds aloft. So a couple isolated tornadoes and strong wind gusts not out of the question here, especially kind of over the Fort Myers and Naples area. We could definitely see some strong supercells kind of come in off the Gulf there and, still retain their tornado producing potential, much like we see over the Gulf with a lot of waterspouts. So if you happen to see any waterspouts out there, let me know. Again, always intriguing to hear those reports. Alrighty, so the game plan, we're going to start with the first storm. Let's finish this up. Again, luckily, only about 24 hours left of receiving impacts from this one, but it is the immediate threat, so we're going to discuss that. And then we're going to discuss that second storm system that, again, is going to have very dynamic impacts here in a couple of days. And then finally, we'll round out here by discussing that potential for an Arctic outbreak and more storm systems down the road. Then after that, I'll let you go and enjoy the rest of your Saturday. So again, right now through the mid-Atlantic, luckily all rain from really D.C. Off towards the south and east here, even into upstate South Carolina, even much of western North Carolina did get ice this morning, but luckily that dry air is moving in pretty quickly as we expected it to, and we should begin to warm up. Now, where we are seeing a different story this afternoon, again, snow breaking out in western Maryland, the higher terrains of eastern West Virginia and western Virginia itself. Kind of a tongue tie there, wording it that way. But either way, snow is breaking out that way. We are also seeing some snow showers back here into sections of Ohio currently. So if you're in Ohio, definitely let me know if you're seeing any snow fly and if it's sticking. Now, as we go later on into this afternoon, luckily for the Mid-Atlantic and Ohio River Valley, a lot of dry air is kind of punching into this storm system. So we will slowly dry out from west to east across this section of the country, although still dealing with a couple showers and maybe even a rumble of thunder or two here in eastern North Carolina and much of southeastern Virginia throughout the afternoon. Before about the time the sun is going down, we really clear out, and we could even be in store for quite a nice sunset. Oftentimes, as these storm systems are pulling away and you get the sun to set on the western horizon there, could help kind of light up some of this cloud deck on the backside. So if you're lucky, maybe you'll get some really nice sunset colors out there tonight. But again, in the Mid-Atlantic, most of the impacts are kind of winding down as we speak. Northeast, a bit of a different story. It's really just getting going up here for this part of the country, and you'll notice as we go later into this afternoon, maybe by the time you're already watching this, snow likely to break out here for much of Pennsylvania, maybe even starting some snow as far south as Philadelphia. But very quickly, that rain-snow line is going to try to push northward. So I think this evening, again, about the time the sun is setting, we've got moderate to heavy snowfall rates for much of northeastern Pennsylvania, southern New York State, the northern half of New Jersey, specifically really the northern tip of New Jersey there. Before overnight tonight, here comes that rain-snow line trying to push northward. It's definitely going to overtake Philadelphia, likely changing over to rain. New York City likely changing back over to rain as well overnight tonight. But we're still locked into heavy snow through kind of Scranton over here through southern sections of New York State, and eventually getting up into Connecticut, Massachusetts, getting some good time snow during the overnight hours tonight. And this is getting into about midnight. We've still got heavy snow falling, likely from Boston, especially those suburbs off towards the west of Boston, getting in on some of that snow. Vermont, New Hampshire, still snowing good in that part of the country, and that snow continues. Now, as we get into tomorrow morning, likely kind of drying out here from New York City down through Philly and kind of the DC-Baltimore corridor, but up here into Vermont, New Hampshire, New York State, Massachusetts, kind of a secondary piece of energy is going to form here on the backside, and we could get another burst of some moderate snowfall here during the morning hours of tomorrow and going into the afternoon. You'll notice here comes that snow once again picking up in intensity through much of Connecticut, Massachusetts, and Rhode Island. Can't even rule out some light snow or flurries in New York City. So if you happen to be in New York, maybe getting some festive flakes there kind of tomorrow afternoon. Before going into tomorrow evening and into the early morning hours of Monday, we really clear out through much of the Northeast. Now, snowfall totals, again, I still think isolated spots here likely to hit a foot of snow, especially kind of in this southern section of New York State and into the higher terrains of western Massachusetts, where you're going to stay snow the entire time and likely benefit from that front end thumping of snow as well as that back end thumping of snow. As for the kind of I-95 corridor, Boston, about, I'd say, 3 to 5 inches of snow, most of that actually sticking on the back side of the storm, but it will snow on the front side, just temperatures will be kind of marginal. Same story down here kind of into central Connecticut and Rhode Island, about 3 to 5 inches of snow. Portions of northern New Jersey here, especially the northern tip, about half a foot, not out of the question, with a very tight gradient here. So just kind of watch that. Areas to the north of this red line really going to cash in. Areas kind of in between these two red lines are going to be on a very thin corridor where it's going to ramp up very quickly as you go off towards the north and west. But also, those snow totals are going to fall off very quickly as you go off towards the south and east. But of course, kind of pick your community on this map, and that's kind of, I think, the best bet of what you could see by the time the storm is all said and done. Alrighty, that's not the only place it is going to see snow. I'm not going to show the radar imagery for here, but what I will mention is we are going to have kind of scattered snow showers and bands of lake effect snow over the next 24 to 36 hours or so, and with that we could pick up a healthy dosing of snow into the UP of Michigan. 1 to 3 inches of snow, not out of the question. Same story into northern Michigan, about closer to a dusting to an inch for most other places through northern Illinois, Indiana, southern Michigan here, Iowa, Minnesota, and much of Wisconsin as well, seeing at least an inch or so of snow. As again, kind of a back-end piece of energy moves through. The snow you're seeing down in Ohio, that's actually kind of what's already currently falling, so by the time you're watching this, I kind of subtract an inch from all of those totals, and that'll be more likely what you see when all is said and done after some of that lake effect moves through in the coming days. Alrighty, that's the first storm. We've kind of got that one broken down. Now let's discuss that next storm. And this one is going to have a lot of impacts, I think. It's already bringing a lot of impacts, in fact, to our friends up in the Pacific Northwest, where we're seeing very heavy snowfall and rainfall rates. And some of these ski resorts out here are really cashing in right now, and I'm sure are very happy to hear this. Now, right now, it's kind of a fun event, especially, again, if you're, going skiing out there. But as we move ahead into next week, this will go from more of a fun storm to what could quite honestly be a dangerous storm, with a severe weather outbreak looking increasingly likely. Power outages will be a problem with a big wind field here, and we'll have flooding issues as well to worry about, and that's not even mentioning blizzard conditions that will make travel treacherous here going into our Tuesday. So let's go ahead and break this down now a little bit, region by region, moment by moment for you, and see what we're expecting. So starting out on the West Coast, again, we're seeing big-time snowfall rates up here into the mountains of Washington, Oregon, Northern California, and Idaho this afternoon. That will continue throughout the overnight as the storm system moves on through, with rain at the coast and in those lower elevations. Now, this is getting into about midnight tonight. You'll notice that snow now moving into sections of Utah and Nevada, which is why we have those winter storm watches and warnings up for some of those areas. Now, going into the time we're waking up tomorrow morning, again, just widespread snow showers now working down into northern Arizona through much of the Four Corners region, seeing that snow falling and likely sticking, especially in those higher elevations. Now, as I continue to move this ahead here, this is getting into Sunday afternoon, and you'll notice this is when the storm kind of really begins to go from just fun mountain snow to a bit of a low pressure really beginning to develop. You'll notice out here we'll get some cyclogenesis to occur, again just meaning that low pressure is forming at the surface and kind of beginning to spin around here. And, you really see that kind of unfolding here going into the overnight Sunday and into Monday, and there we go. By the time we're waking up Monday in the southern Great Plains, here comes that storm really breaking out with more of a kind of fierce look to it. Now, snowfall totals in this part of the country, again, there's going to be a lot of it depending on where you're at here. In the higher terrains of Washington State and Oregon, we could be counting snow totals in feet. As for, other areas, again, kind of the best way to do this map is just kind of find your county where you live, and this is the forecast straight from the National Weather Service on how much snow is expected to fall. So I recommend kind of just pausing the video here if you live out here and kind of, getting that total for yourself. All right, let's take a look now at the other map. And again, same story here. A lot of snow. Again, could be counting it in feet in the Sierra Nevadas. Maybe even upwards of a foot into sections of the Four Corners where we have those highest peaks. Again, though, terrain is so crazy out here in the West. Like I said, just pause the video, find where you live, and that will be probably the best way to get a general idea of how much snow you're getting with this storm system. Alrighty, let's go ahead now and, let me not give you any spoiler alerts there. Let me bring the map back a little bit. Let's talk about the East Coast now and kind of what we're expecting in this region with those snowfall totals here going into this coming storm. And not really just snowfall totals, but a little bit of everything. So what you're seeing on your map right now, this is tomorrow afternoon as that storm system in the northeast is beginning to pull away. Again, you'll notice a lot of that snow falling on the backside here, continuing to accumulate. And here's that kind of second piece of energy I was talking about. You'll notice that we have a bit of a short wave here, or a trough. That's just going to add a little bit more lift here on the backside. That's going to move through, and that's where we could pick up some of those extra snow totals, kind of here through Ohio, Indiana, and maybe even the higher terrains of West Virginia and those northwest-facing slopes of North Carolina. Now, I do think this model is overdoing it a little bit, so maybe bring down how widespread that snow is, but nonetheless, still going to see some extra snow. Now, going into, again, next Monday morning, that's when things get a little more interesting. Back towards the west here, here's that low pressure forming at the surface. We've got rain breaking out through much of Oklahoma, southern Kansas, and into Texas. And here comes that snow and those blizzard conditions likely going to begin to kind of fester here a little bit as we get this big plume of snow to break out through much of Kansas, potentially northern Missouri, southern Nebraska here. Again, this is Monday afternoon. And off to the south there, we've got very strong kind of squall line with a lot of warm Gulf air feeding into it. So Monday is going to be a very active day here for a lot of folks. Very heavy snow in the Central Plains and Midwest, severe weather down here into the Gulf states, and potentially some flooding kind of in between. So again, a very active time here. Now, as we go into Monday evening, that's when things continue to kind of get their act together. Again, a big shield of snow, likely blizzard conditions unfolding into sections still of Kansas, northern Missouri, getting up into Illinois, Iowa, seeing some big time snow out of this as well, I think, overnight Monday. And while that's occurring still, look at this very strong squall line here, kind of trying to push through sections of Louisiana, Mississippi, back up towards Memphis. Could see some really strong storms during the overnight hours of Monday and into Tuesday. Now, getting into the very early morning hours of Tuesday, again, snow still falling up here in the Midwest, really beginning to accumulate. This is where some folks could see more than a foot of snow out of this storm system. That wind blowing as this low pressure continues to strengthen here. Again, blowing snow around, causing really treacherous travel conditions for a lot of those Midwestern interstates. Now at the same time, precipitation begins to kind of work up kind of into the mountains of Appalachia and up towards the mid-Atlantic. We could still have some leftover cold air, and we could be seeing a repeat of what we saw this morning for some of the higher peaks of North Carolina, West Virginia, Virginia. I think freezing rain once again could be a concern, likely unfolding very similar to today, starting as freezing rain and eventually changing back over to rain as that warm air takes over. But the bigger concern here going into Tuesday afternoon, outside of this continued, very big time snowstorm in the Midwest, now at this point for Tuesday afternoon, getting well into Wisconsin, Michigan, including the UP of Michigan, getting in on very big, snow time totals here. But again, this is where I'm getting concerned for our folks in the Southeast, including big cities like Atlanta, Greenville, Spartanburg, Charlotte, Columbia, Asheville, maybe even Knoxville. We're going to have, this storm is going to kind of try to turn northward a little bit here. And that combined with very strong flow out of the southeast, we're going to have overlapping thunderstorms or training of thunderstorms over some of the same areas, and that could lead to big time flooding concerns here through the mid-Atlantic, southeast, and even into the northeast going into our kind of Tuesday time frame and even into Wednesday. Also, Tuesday afternoon, still, we're going to have a very strong wind shear here as these winds coming out of different directions here in the southeast, going to cause, kind of that spinning in the atmosphere, that rotation or wind shear as we like to call it. And that could lead to severe storms here in coastal North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, even down into sections of Florida for our Tuesday afternoon, while again, snow is still falling in the Midwest. Now, for our folks in the Northeast, you'll notice here for Tuesday afternoon, kind of some blue showing up here into Pennsylvania, and if I move this even further ahead into time, going later on into Tuesday evening, that blue continues to show up. I wouldn't get too excited here about that. I do think, again, this could start as a quick burst of heavy wet snow, but a lot of warm air advection is going to occur here, just meaning very strong winds out of the Gulf and the Atlantic are really going to kind of erode that cold air and lead to more of a rain event and more of a flooding event in the Northeast than anything else. Now, this is as far out as this model goes, but again, you'll notice going into Tuesday evening and into the overnights and into Wednesday, still dealing with big time snow, although beginning to dwindle down into the Midwest, while now kind of picking up here into eastern Canada with those near blizzard conditions. But the bigger concern from kind of Tuesday night onward will be that flooding. Again, look at how far this rain band has moved. We looked at this back in Tuesday morning, I think. Let me bring this back a little bit. Yeah, this is by the time we're waking up Tuesday morning. This is over kind of northeast Georgia. And by the time we get all the way into the overnight hours of Tuesday, it's only gotten about as far as Charlotte. So that, again, really screams flooding concern to me. And that will continue up into the northeast as this very heavy plume of moisture out of the south just very slowly moves eastbound. I can almost guarantee you we're going to see some flash flooding concerns going into next week. And the Weather Prediction Center agrees, sure enough. Day 3 excessive rainfall outlook here. We do have a slight risk and a marginal risk of that occurring here for much of the southeast, from Louisiana through southern Mississippi, Alabama, and the Florida Panhandle. Again, this is Monday. But going into Tuesday, that's when things will get kind of a little bit more serious here. And you'll notice we already have a moderate risk. That's as high as they can put the scale here for sections of northern New Jersey. Again, I think overnight Tuesday into Wednesday, a lot of very heavy rainfall overriding the same areas. And same story for the Carolinas, Georgia, and up through Virginia and into the rest of New England. A lot of rain with this system and very strong onshore flow helping to push that rain further inland here. Alrighty, the other thing we need to talk about here obviously is going to be severe weather. I will definitely mention that here, and then we'll take a look at snowfall as well. Going into kind of the day 3 outlook, this is for Monday. We already have a slight risk, again, from the Texas coastline through Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, and the Florida Panhandle. The big deals here, again, will be strong gusty winds as well as a tornado threat for much of Monday. And on Tuesday, that shifts off further towards the east through southeastern Alabama, much of Florida, southern Georgia, South Carolina, and North Carolina. And if you caught my live stream last night, I mentioned this then, but I'll even likely be storm chasing somewhere kind of out in this region for our Tuesday. So again, a pretty big threat here that we need to watch out for. All right, snowfall total, something I'm sure a lot of you are very intrigued by and probably are curious to hear about. Well, our latest ensemble members from the European kind of, I think, paint a pretty good picture. Half a foot to a foot of snow very likely here through much of northern Kansas into northern Missouri. Could see a lot of snow. Same story here through eastern Nebraska, southern Iowa. Again, could see a very heavy dosing of snow here, and that's going to include the wind blowing. So we'll see if any blizzard watches or warnings are put into effect over the next couple of days, but I think it's very likely that that does occur. Now, moving this up into the Midwest, this is where I think we will see the highest wintering impacts out of this storm, especially kind of here into northern Michigan, back into maybe even the Chicago area. This could be the first big-time snowstorm for Chicago this winter very easily, I think. Sure, we're going to see a lot of very interesting video out of Chicago by the time we get into next Wednesday. Again, though, also here into kind of eastern Wisconsin, could also see a very heavy dosing of snow, anywhere from half a foot to a foot, going to be pretty widespread for a lot of folks in this part of the country. And those totals could even try to dip down here into sections of northern Indiana. But I think once we get kind of on the right-hand side of that line here, we're going to start running into some warm air problems. Now, I do think on the backside of the storm system, we will see kind of an uptick in some snow as that cold air wraps around. And I think that's when most of this snow here will fall. And we could also be looking at a northwest flow event for North Carolina and Virginia as well. All right, let's see. Was there any other maps I'm missing here? I don't think so. Okay, so that's the first storm. One thing I did not show that I will show next time, but I will quickly mention here are wind gusts. Again, it's going to be very breezy, I think, through much of the Midwest, but the biggest concern I have with winds is that onshore flow from the southeast up into the northeast, where we could be dealing with some coastal flooding. And again, power outages as well, with winds gusting up near 50 and 60 miles an hour. I'll show you that map in tomorrow's video, but just know winds will also be a problem with that storm. Alrighty, so that's kind of, the next two storms, or really kind of the next 1.5 storms, that first storm already working through. Let's kind of pick up here after this storm. What's on the horizon? Again, here is that big time storm next week, the one we just got done discussing here. That likely, again, moving on out of here, moving up through the Midwest and into eastern Canada and into the Northeast by next Wednesday and Thursday. But look what follows it. A big area of very cold temperatures here showing up. This is actually kind of a piece of the polar vortex that breaks off here and dives southward into kind of the Pacific Northwest and into the northern Rockies here. Now, this big area of blue is going to be it's going to be very strong. It will be quite impressive and will easily be the biggest cold outbreak we've seen so far this winter. And we could have dangerous temperatures out here into sections of Montana, Idaho, Washington, Wyoming, and kind of surrounding areas. Now, this is going into next Thursday, Friday. You'll notice that big area of cold air and troughing showing up out west, but as we go further ahead into time, it slowly tries to meander eastbound. I think about 7 to 10 days from now, if you're watching here east of the Mississippi and you haven't seen snow yet, this is when our pattern becomes a little bit more favorable. But first, we got to watch out for our folks out west. Again, this is dangerous levels of cold, and as I move this further ahead into time, again, you'll notice these blue colors kind of taking over much of the country, and again, slowly meandering eastbound. Now, what does this mean in terms of temperatures? Well, again, we've had a pretty average first week of January here temperature-wise, but here comes that shot of cold air. Watch it kind of begin to develop here into western Canada, and as I move this ahead into time, this is Wednesday afternoon, Thursday afternoon, and into Friday afternoon, we've got an all-out Arctic outbreak for much of the west coast. Ensembles here showing 15 to 20 degrees below what they should be this time of year. Operational runs showing potentially more than 30 degrees below what they should be this time of year. So if your high temperature in Montana is only about 10 degrees in January, subtract 30 from that, it could be negative 20 for a high temperature. So again, obviously, these are very dangerous conditions to life, and we have to be careful of that. Now, again, going about 7 to 10 days out, our ensemble's now kind of picking up on the idea that, hey, maybe this shifts far enough east that just about the entire lower 48 is getting in on this kind of big-time cold air outbreak. And one thing I will mention here that I will actually pull up on the fly, because I get questions all the time about, well, I live in the East Coast, I live in the Southeast, I haven't seen snow yet this year. When is it coming? Well, I'm going to go ahead and show you our latest GFS model. And before I show this to you, I want you to know this is not a forecast, okay? Whatever you see show up here is not my forecast for you. This will not happen. But what it does do a good job at showing, I think, is a potential pattern that could develop here that I'm watching for going into later January. So again, this big kind of area in the middle of the country, that's that storm next week. That kind of pushes on through. And then here comes that cold air out west. And you'll notice we get another storm to develop going into next week along this boundary. Up here, we have high pressure indicating, very cold Arctic Canadian air. And watch these blue lines. Notice how they kind of set up shop here and leave just, the southeast out from the cold air. Well, this is very similar to what we saw in the winter of 2021. If you remember that, Texas got absolutely blasted by cold air. They had rounds and rounds of winter storms, and the power grid just couldn't keep up. I think this could be a similar setup, but in maybe different areas than we saw in 2021. So this is going into next weekend, about a week out from now. Models already hinting at another storm system, and don't worry, we'll discuss this more in depth in the coming days. But this one, again, looks very similar to the storm that we're going to see early this week. So we could get another punch of very heavy snow, flooding, and severe weather. It's after that storm, though, that it kind of, again, rides that boundary I told you about, and this one really tries to pull that cold air that's back out west with it east. And then that boundary, again, that I just showed you could now set up shop potentially a little bit further south and east. And should that happen, here we go. Again, this is going about 10 days out, so this is not a forecast, just showing you what I think the pattern could look like going into the middle of the month. And that boundary now setting up shop right through the southern half of the country, any new low pressures that form and ride it could now bring snow and ice much further south, and potentially, into the southeast, mid-Atlantic, and I think that pattern could continue here, again, even going later on into January. So if you haven't seen snow already, I don't want you to lose hope necessarily. I think, there is a good pattern on the horizon. And so far, the models have been relatively okay, actually, with these long-range patterns. You'll probably remember Christmas time. I was telling you the first 2 weeks of January, they're going to be active. We're going to have multiple snowstorms. And here we are, half a month later almost. And, it's unfolding right before our very eyes. So the model's been doing okay, and I'm going to continue to trust them here in the long range. And personally, I feel still pretty confident that we're going to get a southeastern snowstorm here, at least somewhere from the middle of the month through the end of kind of winter here. Alrighty, well, a lot of information we discussed in today's video. Again, if you get any cool pictures out there, definitely consider submitting them with that link in the description, and have a chance to have them featured in upcoming videos. With that said, though, hope you have a great rest of your Saturday out there. Stay safe, and I will see you all tomorrow.